to the knitted star on week 4. So we're going to put together the star quadrants, I guess is what I'll call it. So hopefully you got through all of your cutting for last week. I didn't hear anybody calling out for help. So hopefully you made it through it and you aren't getting behind, because this is going to be what we want to be making next. Okay, so in this block, this was part A, this corner here, and then part B. So all the cutting is these additional pieces that you see on the block here. So not super complicated, especially if you've ever done a log cabin block. It's a lot like that. So it's fairly simple. And it is what I would call a half log cabin because it's only doing 2 sides of the block as you go. So you'll take your square, lay out your pieces, and you're just going to sew, you know, like this strip goes on, and then this one, and then this one, and this one, and 3, and then 4. So you're just going to kind of rock back and forth between 2 sides. So to give you an idea, I did kind of some step outs just to give you hopefully a better understanding. So I'm going to tilt the camera for a second. Hopefully I don't make you too dizzy because the camera, I'm going to try to move it around a little bit. My suggestion is to lay everything out on a surface next to you at your sewing machine so that you can keep it organized, because as we've learned with this pattern, staying organized is very key. So I'm going to move the camera just for a second. We're going to show you, hopefully, how I have it organized. I may just have to wing it. Okay, so there's all my mess and my block. So here is section A, and then all the coordinating pieces are next to it laid out. Okay, so hopefully you're not getting too ill. Those of you with motion sickness, apologize. But I want to make sure you understand how this one's going together, because it just takes flipping one thing around and it can all go kind of wonky on you. And we don't like that. So first step is you'll take your block and place your first strip, which was just a plain of your star fabric, and you're going to lay it right sides together and do your 1/4 inch seam. So these are the reasons why it's really important to make sure that everything's laid out correctly so that you're placing this solid fabric on the correct side of this block, because it's going to be very important this lonely little square stays in the corner away from all the strips you're putting on. Okay, so then that'll be on, and I've already kind of pinned number 2. So it'll look like that. And then what I do is that next side is I make sure that I'm going to match up these seams at the top. So there's always going to be this square that follows through that gives the knitted look. So I matched that seam. So I'm just going to pin that, and then I always pin the opposite end. So remember, if you follow along with me, I'm always making sure the beginning and the end are pinned so that these edges stay straight and everything else trues up in the middle. So you're going to sew that on, and then you just keep going. So after that is on, it'll look, as I poke myself, it'll look like this. So there was my straight strip, and then there's the first section, and then the next one is going to go right sides together. This side, what I'm going to call the right hand side, does not ever have a seam that matches up. So one side's not going to have a seam that matches up. The other side is always going to have at least one seam that matches up. So and one side will always have the square. So then you just pin, you sew your 1/4 inch seam, and you keep going. Okay, so this is the straight plain fabric. This is the one that you're always going to have the white at the bottom. So this is the side that every time you put it on, you want to make sure that white square, the same size white square, is on the bottom, because it's what's going to make that knitted look in your star. And then this side is always going to not have a seam you match up, so you always want to make sure you're matching up the beginning and the end to keep everything nice and straight, because I'm sure even if you look at mine, my block's got a little bit of a waffle in it. This guy's got a lot of weird seams, so that's why you want to try as best as you can, and then a good starch spray. I always starch my blocks at the end to make them nice and crisp, so they're good and as square as they can be. So that's what you're doing this week. So it's not super complicated. It's just making sure that you lay everything out and you're making sure that you're going back and forth from the right side to that left side and keeping everything nice and as even as you possibly can. Okay, so that's your homework, because next week we'll talk about how to put the final star together and then how to put the quilt together. I mean, we're almost there, so hang tight, guys. And if you're doing a wall hanging, really you're just making one of these, you're more than welcome to move on ahead in the pattern and finish it up, because it's not super complicated, or you can wait for me next week and we'll talk about those finishing steps, because you know, you could be like me, you could have a lot of other things going on and you're just lucky to get this far and be happy. So okay, this is your goal, is to make, you'll have 4 of each fabric if you're doing multiple fabrics like I am. So I have a variety of colors, so each one's going to need 4 of these that will make one final star in the end. Otherwise, if you're doing just 2 colors, then just follow the instructions of how many it's going to tell you to make, and you can just kind of chain piece that guy along, because in the end you don't have to worry about mixing up fabrics, where in mine potentially I could swap the wrong prints. So hopefully that helped you out. If you have any questions, as always, you know how to reach me. You can email me, Mindy at Quilting Mayhem, or call the shop. Whatever you need to do, reach out to me through Facebook. Any of it all works. Do not be afraid to ask questions. That's what I'm here for, especially with this pattern. This pattern's definitely kind of that whole next level. I would call this a little more intermediate probably than, say, a beginner. So don't be afraid. Just let me know. Okay, guys? Otherwise, have a happy Friday and keep on stitching.